All right, welcome to the May 1st, 2025 Board of Zoning Appeals meeting. All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. So if everybody can quieten down in the audience just so everybody can hear. So welcome to the May 1st, 2025 Board of Zoning Appeals meeting. We'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. We are all present tonight, so welcome back. Last time we had a meeting was February, so I had a delay last month with the storms, had a meeting canceled the month before that. So good to have everybody back. It's almost summer now. We were cold last meeting, warm this meeting. So let's start with citizen comments. This is open for citizens to be heard on any issue or concern. If you'd like to speak on a specific item on the agenda, please wait until the citizen comment period for that item. So again, for each item, we're going to have a time to speak on those items. For all citizen comments, fill out a speaker card and hand that to staff. I don't know if we have those here or not. So we do, so perfect. And come up to the microphone, state your name and address, and limit your comments to 2 minutes. So again, per the bylaws, each individual will have 2 minutes per person. So we're going to track that just to keep the meeting moving along. Are there any citizen comments or citizens that would like to speak to the board outside of items on the agenda? Kind of just a general comment period. All right, seeing none, we will move on to next item. It is minutes, consideration of approval of the February 6th, 2025 meeting minutes. Is there a motion?
I move we approve the minutes.
Motion made by Board Member Smith. Is there a second?
A second.
Second by Board Member Beams. Got your last name correct there, so appreciate the help earlier. All in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All right, anyone opposed? All right, the minutes are approved. Staff announcements. Okay. We will move on then to item number 2. It's going to be a variance request to allow a loading area to be located to the side of the principal building for the property located at 490 Downs Boulevard. Staff.
Thank you. The subject property is located at 490 Downs Boulevard and is zoned Light Industrial District. The property is currently vacant, and the applicant is proposing a warehouse for excess inventory on the site. The proposed use requires a loading dock area for delivery purposes, and the zoning ordinance requires on-site loading dock areas to be located to the rear of the building adjacent to the loading doors. Given the width and the depth of the site, the applicant has had difficulty designing the site in a way that a semi-trailer could access a loading area to the rear of the building. The design of the building with the loading area in the rear is not conducive to the site. The applicant has also stated that there will be minimal traffic to the site and no daily workers, so the configuration should not have a negative impact on daily traffic to the site. In order to design the site in a way that is functional and for semi-trailer access, the applicant is requesting a variance to allow a loading area to be located to the side of the principal building. Staff also wanted to note that the current setbacks for the property do not match the proposed setbacks shown on the plans. The applicant intends to replat the property to establish easements and revise the setbacks to match the proposed design. The proposed setbacks meet the zoning ordinance requirements for the light industrial district, so staff does not currently foresee issues with the proposed setbacks, but they will need to be revised in order to proceed with the proposed design. I'll now go into staff analysis of the 3 criteria. Seeing as we have a few requests this month, for the sake of time, I'm going to read through the 3 criteria just for this first request, and for the rest I'll just read the justification. Criteria 1, where by reason of the exceptional narrowness, shallowness, or shape of a specific piece of property at the time of the enactment of the zoning ordinance, or by reason of exceptional topographic conditions or other extraordinary and exceptional situations or conditions, such a piece of property is not able to accommodate development as required under this ordinance. Due to the width and depth of this site, the applicant has not been able to design a building with a loading area to the rear that is practical for a semi-trailer to be able to access. As shown in the infeasible turning exhibit, the building would need to be an odd shape with a loading area in the rear that is difficult to access by a semi-trailer. Seeing as the size and shape of the property is preventing accommodation with the zoning ordinance in a way that is practical for the use, staff finds this criteria is met. Criteria 2. The strict application of any provision enacted under the zoning ordinance would result in peculiar and exceptional practical difficulties for, or exceptional or undue hardship upon the owner of the property. The strict application of the zoning ordinance would result in an oddly shaped building with a loading area in the rear that is difficult to access by a semi-trailer. In order to drive or fit a driveway where a semi-trailer could access the loading area in the rear area of the property, the driveway to the rear would need to be located very close to the east side of the property and require a semi-trailer to back out from behind the building. The zoning ordinance regulation is preventing a semi-truck from practically accessing a loading area on a lot that is zoned light industrial. Staff finds this criteria is met. Criteria 3, such relief may be granted without substantial detriment to the public good and without substantially impairing the purpose and intent of the zoning ordinance. Staff does not find that this would be a detriment to the public good or impair the intent of the zoning ordinance. The properties to the east, west, and south are also zoned light industrial district, so this intended use with the semi-trailer loading area fits contextually with the zoning along the street. Additionally, the neighborhood to the north of this property is residential, so the loading dock being located to the side of the building is farther from the residential neighborhood than if it were located behind the building. So the loading area should not have a negative impact on the residential neighborhood behind this property. The primary intent of the zoning ordinance in this case is to prevent loading areas from being highly visible from the street. The applicant has worked to have the loading area to the side of the building rather than the front and intends to screen the loading area from the property to the east. This ensures that the loading area isn't highly visible from Downs Boulevard. Staff finds that this design would not be a detriment to the public good and is intentional to meet the intent of the zoning ordinance in this case. Recommended motion. Staff recommends that the Board of Zoning Appeals move to approve the variance request to allow a loading area to be located to the side of the building for the property located at 490 Downs Boulevard because the criteria for granting a variance have been met. This concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, staff. Is the applicant present for this item? If you could step forward for us and state your name.
Thank you. CJ Murrow with 615 Design Group, 1517 Hunt Club Boulevard, Gallatin, Tennessee. Ariella, thank you for the presentation and good evening, board members. As she said, we're dealing with a narrow site and not a very deep site. All of the zoning around us is zoned light industrial. She did mention that the intent is to revise the final plat to change the setbacks. The only setbacks that we would be changing would be the side and the rear setbacks. We would still meet the front setback that's on the plat. There is that isn't the only thing that's pushing the building further back from the street. The other thing that's pushing the building further back from the street is all of the properties that are located along the north side of Downs Boulevard have an access easement that stretches across all of them for cross connection between the sites. And so when you push the building back and you try to get a semi-trailer to access the site, it's just very difficult to have the dock access in the rear of the building. So as she stated, the intent is to have the dock access on the side of the building at an angle. You should have in your packet that we showed a successful turning template for that, and the intent is to screen the eastern side of the property either with an opaque fence or evergreen shrubs that would limit the visibility of the dock door. Happy to answer any questions you guys may have.
Okay, thank you. You're welcome. If you want to take a seat, we may have questions for you in a second, but
Yes, sir.
that way you won't have to stand up the whole time. All right, next we will open the public comment for this item. Are there any citizen comments?
Hey there. Nick Pascal White, 414 Figures. So I live in the neighborhood that's to the north of this. I've had a past life in the trucking and logistics industry. The big concern of the neighborhood, talking with my neighbors, is it should not impact the community. I know the Jocelyn's who live right behind it have already written a letter. Decibel levels with trucks. My recommendation is to put the loading dock on the front. I know that doesn't meet Franklin standards. However, it's an industrial area. The Vulcan plant is right there. There's heavy trucks moving in. So anything further away from the houses is going to be better for the community. Additionally, the zoning commission has not really done us any favors in this community. Like when they built the new FSSD elementary school, 1,500 Figures had flooding. We're seeing channeling from the big storage facility there. So the community also has a concern about water runoff coming off. So if it keeps it further off of that and that easement that the developer talked about and keeping that grass, then we might not have as flooding concerns, because the last thing we want as a community is to have flood insurance down the road because of putting just concrete and there's no drainage. So, and then he talked about the obscuring it from the side, the east side. Reading the plans of it, it's going to be an unmanned facility, which leaves an ingress point. I look at that as a security concern. If there's not going to be anybody on staff, especially coming from the trucking industry, of individuals trying to break into loading docks and/or trucks. So those are kind of my concerns. I'm not saying that the developers did anything wrong, but with my comments, I'm concerned about the security, the noise, and then the water runoff for the area. So if those could be addressed, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks for your comments. Mr. Jared Sullivan kind of had the next card. Okay, perfect.
Yeah, hi there. Thank you for your time. I live at 419, which there's like an old railroad track behind this lot, and my lot is right behind this railroad berm behind this property. I would also prefer the loading be on the front. The gentleman with the developer said that they're intending to move the building back closer to my lot, which I do not like at all, because there is a culvert that runs underneath the railroad berm that feeds into a drainage ditch essentially next to my property. And currently 490 Downs, the property we're in question, all that water from that property drains to the culvert next to my lot. And so I think I have rightly concerned that if they don't leave grass space behind this building they intend to build, that water's not going to get absorbed in the ground. It's going to all feed into this culvert and cause flooding on my property, which would be a huge, huge mess. And I think the city of Franklin does a lot of things well, but they have not done very well in our community, in our neighborhood, concerning drainage and water flow. Franklin, as the properties around Franklin Elementary School flood. There's a property up the street at 409 Downs is a storage unit. The city let them build the building too close to the lot line, and it causes flooding on property on Figures. And at 111 Battle Avenue, which is around the corner from us, there's also development. The city failed to ensure that lot didn't flood, and the flooding in that lot's so bad the city had to acquire that lot from the property owners and tear it down. So I know you guys hear water concerns, flooding concerns a lot, but you guys have not great track record in our neighborhood. So for those reasons, I would prefer if there was more space behind this building left, and if the loading was on the front. Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional citizen comments on this item? All right, seeing none, is there a motion to close the public comment?
Motion to close.
Second.
Motion made by Board Member Scales, second by Board Member Smith. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Or anyone opposed? All right, so public comment's closed. Any questions from the board of staff or the applicant? If not, I'm ready to entertain a motion when you guys are ready.
Yeah, if we were to approve this variance request, I note that in the staff report, it talks about the setbacks, and there needing to be some revisions made there. Would our approval then remain with it if it goes back to be replatted? To make sense, you understand my question?
The variance would run with the property and this design setbacks can be changed.
Okay. Okay.
With respect to stormwater runoff and their concerns, I see that there's a pond that we've designed in the back. Is the calculation such that we're going to produce less water off the site than potentially we do right now?
You might,
Do you want this applicant to answer that or staff?
Yes, sir. So to address the concern of the water, we're required to ensure that the water that's leaving the site is at a lower flow rate than before this was built. How we're treating the water on site will be a combination of infiltrative measures and likely detention of some sort that's underground. We're going to be utilizing the natural outfalls of the site, which is not to the rear of the site, but to the east of the site. But the intent is to capture the water, infiltrate the first storm event into the ground, and then slowly release it off site. Where it's already.
Is it slowly being released through the same culvert that gentleman was talking about?
So, thanks for the reminder. The culvert that he's mentioning, this site's a little interesting from an existing stormwater standpoint. There is a conveyance that's on the west side of our site that captures water from the storage. And then there is an existing pipe that runs west to east through our site and then outfalls. That pipe is going to remain or slightly be revised, but it is still going to be utilized. The conveyance that's on the west side of the site, we're going to cover and pipe. We'll ensure that all the pipes are sized correctly, but ultimately that culvert is to remain. The building that we're proposing on site is in between that culvert and the front setback.
Okay, so have we, as staff, have they checked the calculations to the point where what he's proposing is going to work?
Staff has not reviewed that with the variance request submittal. I would think that would be with the
Building and
site plan.
Neighborhood Services?
Well, it'll come through the site plan process. Our engineering department will review that with the site plan.
Staff encouraged us to go through the variance request prior to going through the site plan
Sure.
process.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Any additional questions from the board? Okay. Is there a motion?
I move that we approve the zoning variance because I feel the criteria have been met.
Okay, motion for approval made. Is there a second?
I second.
Okay, second by Board Member Beams. We'll go one by one on the vote. Board Member Beams.
I approve.
Board Member Scales.
Approve.
Board Member Langley, I approve. Board Member Flushauer.
Nay.
And Board Member Smith.
Approve.
Okay, so we have 4 for approve and 1 for not approve. So this item passes. The variance request is approved. All right, moving to item number 3. It's a variance request to allow a fence in the front yard area with a maximum height of 7 feet for the property located at 1005 Marylinger Court. Staff?
Thank you. The subject property is located at 1005 Marylinger Court and is zoned Regional Commerce 4. The property currently has one existing principal building that is located 165 feet from the front lot line, and the owner is proposing a gym facility behind the existing building. This property received approval from the Board of Zoning Appeals in September 2023 for the proposed principal building to be located 225 feet from the front lot line. Because the existing and proposed buildings are located far from the front lot line, a large portion of the lot is considered the front yard area, and the majority of the front yard area runs along the rear and side of the property's southwest of the site. For privacy purposes, the owner would like to have a 7-foot fence extending along both sides of the property in the front yard area. Staff analysis. Criteria 1, the shape of this lot and the fact that the majority of the front yard area runs along the rear and side of the property southwest of the site make this property unique, with the existing building being located far from the front lot line due to the uniquely narrow front end of the lot. The existing building is facing the rear and side of most of its neighboring properties. In order to have privacy from the rear and sides of neighboring properties that most other properties are allowed to have, this property cannot accommodate the zoning ordinance requirements for fence height in the front yard area. Staff finds that this criteria is met. Criteria 2. The majority of the front yard area runs along the rear and side of the property southwest of this site, which means those neighboring properties would be allowed to have fences up to 8 feet along that same property line. This creates a unique hardship that this property owner cannot have a 7-foot fence along a property line abutting the rear of another property where the other properties could have a 8-foot fence at the same location. Therefore, the zoning ordinance regulation is preventing this property from having a reasonable privacy from the side and rear yard of its neighboring properties. Staff finds this criteria is met. Criteria 3, staff finds that the fence height is not a detriment to the public good and meets the intent of the zoning ordinance. Part of the intent of the zoning ordinance in this case is to ensure that fences in the front yard areas and facing streets are consistent in height and are not obtrusively tall along the street. Given the unique shape and the recessed location of the existing and proposed buildings, the fence height would be minimally visible. The majority of the fence would be screened by trees, and the unique shape and orientation of the property contributes to the fence being contextually appropriate along the property lines. Staff finds this criteria is met. Recommended motion. Staff recommends that the Board of Zoning Appeals move to approve the variance request to allow a fence in the front yard area with a maximum height of 4 feet. With a maximum height of 7 feet for the property located at 1005 Marylinger Court because the criteria for granting a variance have been met.
Thank you, staff. Is the applicant present for this item? If you could step forward for us, state your name, and add any additional comments you have.
Hey there, I'm Luke Klausner. I'm the civil engineer for this project. The original applicant, Andy Dennis, couldn't be here tonight, so I'm here instead. I think this is pretty straightforward. I think the way that this lot sits, the building's pretty far back, so it has a lot of frontage compared to a normal, typical site. We've actually gone through a variance request before for the face of this building when it comes to like lot lines and setback lines. So I don't really have much to add unless you guys need anything.
All right, next we'll move to the public comment. So citizen comments for this item. Are there any citizens that would like to speak on this item? I think I've got one speaker card. Off with the last names. I'll say Dr. Paula, and you'll help me on the last name.
That's fine, that's what I go by. Yeah, I'm Dr. Paula Schur. I own Animal Ark Animal Hospital, which abuts against this particular property. And my concern is for any fencing because as my neighbor, they have placed a chain link fence in what I consider a permanent manner. It was placed with a bobcat using an auger and sacks of concrete and a level. So I don't know about a temporary fence ever having been placed in such a manner. That was placed on August 27th, 2022. I've contacted the city multiple times and asked, hey, if I, as a veterinary clinic, had wanted a chain link fence, I was denied because I had asked that years ago when I first built. I was told that this was a temporary structure, this fence that is put in with concrete level and had chain link. I was told at your September 2023 or fall meeting, I believe it was September, that as of January 1st of 24 that this would be removed. It is yet to be removed. The only thing that has been removed has been the ratty tarp that has been across it. I have a concern because there's also 12-plus shipping containers on this property site that have been present for over a year. So I don't know if that's what they're trying to shield with this, but there is more cubic foot capacity in those shipping containers than any capacity that could be within that facility, even with the expansion. So my concern is, if you have a fence there, is this thing going to continue to allow the fence that I currently have to look at, which is, in my understanding, against the zoning, as I've been told multiple times, and have been told multiple times that it would be removed. Yet, here we are, 2+ years later, and it's still there.
Thank you for your comments. We appreciate it. Any additional comments, citizen comments on this item? All right, seeing none, is there a motion to close the public comment?
Motion to close.
Motion made by Board Member Flushauer. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Board Member Smith. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Or anyone opposed? All right, the public comment's closed. Questions from the board? I think I'll go ahead and kind of address this one. I think question on the chain link fence on the citizen comment, could Could you help us with that, Shanna?
Yes, so the fence was originally placed illegally. When we first contacted the new owner of the property, we were advised that he was going to be getting some building permits. So staff allowed this to be considered a temporary construction fence, and there have been subsequent building permits. It has been made abundantly clear to the owner and the applicant that there will not be a certificate of occupancy issued for the new addition or to the new building until this fence is removed and the storage containers are removed.
Thank you. Any additional questions at all? I'll ask one follow-up. If I'm the citizen, I would probably ask, well, what's the time frame for construction? Do we know that at all?
Yeah, so we are currently, the building foundation has been laid, so we're starting to go vertical. I think we are about to have the building permit approved, so it's on the way. And just to answer the concern, so the chain link fence is temporary. We're going to be replacing, if you look at the exhibit that's a part of this, it's going to be replaced with a wooden fence with masonry columns that follows all the zoning ordinance. And I believe there is a fence submittal that has to be made for this to be approved, and that will be made before this fence is put in. So it'll be brought up to code.
Okay, so like less than 12 months you're thinking, or?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, the goal is to have this thing open by July. So, and then to just add on the storage that's in those containers, all those containers are going to be removed from the site when building is done. It's all the equipment that he brought over for when he moved here. And so a lot of those containers actually aren't completely full. They just are the only spot that he has for the storage. So all those will be gone. There won't be any traces of those.
Okay, thank you. All right, any additional questions or a motion?
I move to approve the variance request to allow a fence in the front yard area with a maximum height of 7 feet for the property located at 1005 Merlinger Court because the criteria for granting a variance have been met.
I second.
Okay, motion for approval of the variance by Board Member Scales, second by Board Member Smith. Any additional comments or discussion? All right, let's go one by one here. Did you have a comment, Jeff? Don't want to cut you off there. Yeah, I think it was a typo in the staff report originally, but it's 7 feet is the variance request. So William covered that one. So in his motion, he included 7 feet, just to clarify that. Good catch, though. You're on it, Jeff. Let's go one by one on the vote. So Board Member Beams.
I approve.
Board Member Scales.
Approve.
Board Member Langley, I approve. Board Member Flushauer.
I approve.
And Board Member Smith.
Approve.
All right, this variance request is approved then. All right, so item number 4 is a variance request to allow an accessory structure to be located in front of the principal building for the property located at 900 Brink Place. Staff.
Thank you. The subject property is located at 900 Brink Place and is zoned R3 Residential 3 District. There is an existing single-family house on the property, and the owner is proposing 1 accessory structure and 1 minor accessory structure for storage use. Because this property is a corner lot, it fronts both Brink Place and Del Rio Court, with the front door facing Brink Place. The existing house is set back 50 feet from Brink Place, which significantly reduces the backyard space, so the owner is proposing an accessory structure and a minor accessory structure to the side of the house between the existing house and Del Rio Court. The zoning ordinance requires accessory structures to be located at least 5 feet behind the principal building. For this reason, the applicant is requesting a variance to allow an accessory structure and a minor accessory structure to be located to the side of the principal building. Criteria 1, the property is a corner lot, so the existing house is set back, significantly from Brink Place, and there is a small existing shed in the backyard. Given these conditions, the desired accessory structure and minor accessory structure cannot fit in the backyard area and therefore is not able to accommodate development as required under this ordinance. Staff finds this criteria is met. Criteria 2. The strict application of the zoning ordinance in this case would prevent the owner from having an accessory structure for storage use. The existing home does not have a garage that is suitable to store equipment to maintain the property, and the existing accessory structure in the backyard is much smaller than the required size of a garage, so it is not suitable for storage use. Given the conditions of the lot, the only space that can fit the proposed accessory structure and minor accessory structure is to the side yard facing Del Rio Court, which does not comply with the zoning ordinance requirements. Therefore, the strict application of the zoning ordinance is preventing the owner from having these accessory structures to store equipment to maintain the property. Considering this hardship, staff finds this criteria is met. Criteria 3. Staff finds this request would not be a detriment to the public good or impair the intent of the zoning ordinance. Part of the intent of this regulation is to minimize visibility of accessory structures from the street and prevent accessory structures from being in front of the principal building. There is tall and lush greenery that extends from the corner at Brink Place and Del Rio Court to the northwest corner of the property. Given the unique shape of the property, this greenery would minimize visibility of the accessory structures from both Brink Place and Del Rio Court. With the greenery screening the accessory structures and the accessory structures being to the side of the existing building, the proposed request meets the intent of the zoning ordinance. Since they will be well screened from the street, the accessory structures should not have a negative impact on the neighborhood aesthetically or be a detriment to the public good. Staff finds this criteria is met. Staff recommends that the Board of Zoning Appeals move to approve the variance request to allow an accessory structure and one minor accessory structure to be located in front of the principal building for the property located at 900 Brink Place because the criteria for granting a variance have been met.
Thank you, staff. Is the applicant present for this item? If you could step forward for us and state your name.
My name is Casey Chrisman.
Okay. Any additional comments outside of staff's comments?
If you can see the satellite view, that the house is a standard, when it was constructed in '84, is a standard ranch style. So it's wider than it is deep. And so the builder, instead of constructing a house that would fit on that lot better and pull it up to the front for the 50-foot setback, they chose to just push it back further to accommodate the building on that lot. So that's why there's not much of a backyard to have. So, yep.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Are there any citizen comments on this item? All right. Seeing none, is there a motion to close the public comment?
I move we close the public comment.
Motion made by Board Member Smith. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Board Member Scales. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Are anyone opposed? All right. Public comment is closed. Questions from the board?
I have one question for staff. Is the driveway going to remain coming out on Brink's Place, or will the driveway to this accessory structure come off of Del Rio Court?
It's remaining in place. The proposed structure is not for daily vehicle use. So it's not for their daily vehicles to pull into the garage.
Okay. Another question I had is there's, in the criteria 3, there's some discussion about the greenery, the lush greenery. Having looked at that property, that doesn't appear to be landscaped greenery. It looks like it's overgrown. Is there any requirement from the city that screening be maintained or continued, since that's one of the criteria that we're making the exception?
I don't believe it's required screening. Accessory structures, correct me if I'm wrong, Shanna, aren't required to be screened. It's just an existing condition that we're pointing out.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any additional questions?
Do we know the height of the proposed new structure?
I'm not sure the height.
It's a 22 by 22 foot with a 6 and 12 pitch. So it has to be by ordinance lower than the primary structure. So,
Okay. Any additional questions at all? Or is there a motion?
I move to approve the variance request to allow one accessory structure and one minor accessory structure to be located in the front of the principal building for the property located at 900 Brink Place because the criteria for granting a variance have been met.
Second.
Okay, motion for approval made by Board Member Scales, second by Board Member Smith. Any discussion? All right, let's take a vote kind of one by one. We'll start with Board Member Beams.
I approve.
Board Member Scales.
Approve.
Board Member Langley, I approve. Board Member Fleischauer. Board Member Smith.
Approved.
All right, this variance request is approved. Item number 5 is a variance request to allow outdoor sales areas associated with a commercial use to be located behind the building and on the roof. So that's the first variance request. And a second variance request to allow outdoor sales areas to not be limited to 1/2 of the length of the front building facade for the property located at 230 Franklin Road. Staff.
Thank you. The subject property is located at 230 Franklin Road and is zoned PD Plan District. The property is also located within the Historic Preservation Overlay and the Central Franklin Overlay. The existing buildings on the property make up the factory at Franklin, which is a historically significant site containing various commercial uses. Building 1 at the factory is a 2-story building that was built with the original factory in 1929 and has since hosted multiple restaurant uses. Building 1 is currently vacant, and the plan is to convert the building from restaurant to retail use. The proposed retail tenant plans to have outdoor sales, which the zoning ordinance requires to be located immediately adjacent to the front facade of the building and limited to no more than 1/2 of the length of the front building facade. There is currently a front patio that was previously used for restaurant seating as well as parking spaces and sidewalks for pedestrian circulation in front of Building 1. In the rear area, there is an existing concrete patio behind the building that was previously used for outdoor seating for restaurant uses, and an outdoor patio on the second floor or the roof that was also used for outdoor seating. The outdoor patio on the second floor has an area that is not covered at all and an area that is covered but not enclosed. The applicant is proposing to use these areas on the roof as well as the concrete patio on the ground floor for outdoor sales. In order to have outdoor sales in these areas, the applicant is requesting a variance to allow outdoor sales areas associated with a commercial use to be located behind the building and on the roof, and a variance to allow outdoor sales areas to not be limited to 1/2 of the length of the front building facade. I'll now go into staff analysis for request 1 to allow outdoor sales areas associated with a commercial use to be located behind the building and on the roof. Criteria 1. The existing building has a covered front patio that runs along the entirety of the front facade of the building and a sidewalk between the patio and the parking spaces in front of the building. While the existing patio space may be limited, the patio space was previously used for restaurant seating and would not impede pedestrian circulation if it were used for outdoor sales. Without justification for the inability to use the front patio for outdoor sales, staff finds that it is feasible for outdoor sales to be located immediately adjacent to the front facade of the building. Staff finds this criteria is not met. Criteria 2. The strict application of the zoning ordinance in this case would not result in an exceptional hardship. Considering the existing front patio that could be used for outdoor sales without impeding pedestrian circulation or losing parking spaces, there would not be a hardship caused by locating the outdoor sales in the existing outdoor patio area in the front. Staff finds this criteria is not met. Criteria 3. Staff finds that having outdoor sales areas located behind the building and on the roof would not be a detriment to the public good or impair the intent of the zoning ordinance in this case. The primary intent of the ordinance in this case is to ensure that outdoor sales areas remain immediately adjacent to the main sales areas and to maintain consistency with outdoor sales areas for aesthetic purposes. Given the unique layout of the existing building and outdoor patios, this request would not impair that intent. Building 1 faces Franklin Road and with the rear facade and existing patios facing one of the main factory building entrances, with a pedestrian walkway area between, so it would not look out of place for the outdoor sales areas to be facing this area. Additionally, the outdoor sales are proposed to be immediately adjacent to the building facade, so this request meets that intent. Staff finds this criteria is met. Staff analysis for request 2, to allow outdoor sales areas to not be limited to 1/2 of the length of the front building facade. Criteria 1. Similarly to the justification for criteria 1 of the first request, the existing building has a covered front patio that runs along the entirety of the front facade of the building. Without justification for the inability to use the front patio for outdoor sales, staff finds that it's feasible for outdoor sales to be located on the existing front patio and limited to 1/2 the length of the front facade of the building. Staff finds this criteria is not met. Criteria 2. Staff finds that there would not be a hardship caused by having outdoor sales located along 1/2 of the length of the front facade on that existing patio. Staff finds this criteria is not met. Criteria 3. Staff finds that the outdoor area is not limited to 1/2 the length of the front building facade would not be a detriment to the public good or impair the intent of the ordinance in this case. The primary intent of the ordinance in this case is to ensure that outdoor sales areas do not dominate the front facade of commercial buildings, and given the layout of the existing building and outdoor patios, this request would not impair that intent. With the proposed outdoor sales areas being in the rear area and partially on the second floor, these areas would not be seen from the front of the building or from Franklin Road. Staff finds this criteria is met. Staff recommends that the Board of Zoning Appeals move to disapprove a variance request to allow outdoor sales areas associated with a commercial use to be located behind the building and on the roof, and disapprove a variance request to allow outdoor sales areas to not be limited to 1/2 of the length of the front building facade for the property located at 230 Franklin Road, because the criteria for granting a variance have not all been met. Thank you.
Thank you, staff. Is the applicant present for this item?
Hi, my name is Greg Gamble, and I'm representing the applicant Holiday Properties, who owns the factory. This variance request is being initiated because they are requesting a change of use from restaurant to retail for this building. Chairman, there's some additional information I'd like to provide tonight. I have 4 photographs. Would you mind if I pass those out?
Yeah, if you could hand those to staff and they'll get them to us up here, that'd be great.
Okay. I think I have enough. Would you count those?
Yeah, if we're short, we can share it too.
I brought 10 copies, so I've got plenty. I just don't know if I handed you.
Yeah, we're nice and tight, so John might even be able to see mine from here.
Would you mind, for the public, could you zoom in on the top photograph there? Thank you. On this photograph, you'll see that there is a green metal awning that has been attached to the building. This was attached in the late 90s by a previous owner of the factory campus. This awning is not original to this building. This building was built in the late 1800s and was the administrative offices for the factory. So this is where you would see a line of people waiting at the door outside to go pick up their paycheck at the end of the week. The factory Holiday Properties would like to return this front elevation to its original look when it was first built. And they're planning on removing this awning. But our next step, the next board that we need to go before, is the Historic Zoning Commission for their approval to remove something that was added on in the 90s. You'll see underneath this, there's a concrete pad, and there are concrete columns and then a black rail. That black rail is going to be removed. Those concrete columns are going to be removed underneath the metal columns. And then this area will be a pedestrian path to get to the front door. And that wasn't very well explained in my report. These photographs helped to articulate that in a better way. this area here in front, that concrete area, is going to be a pedestrian connection back to the main sidewalk. Now, if you look to the next page, you'll see a wooden deck. So this is on the left side of the building that's on the screen. It's been discovered recently, matter of fact, since our initial submittal of the BZA, that there's some deterioration of this wooden deck. And the reason is that the land is sloping from the sidewalk to the building foundation. There is a cellar underneath this building, and they've discovered molding in that cellar because stormwater is going down along the face of the brick wall where the foundation, down to the foundation, and then going into that cellar. They don't plan on using that cellar, but they do need to remedy the situation. And so they're going to be removing this entire wooden deck area, and they're going to be regrading that land between the building foundation, or between the building wall and the sidewalk, and then replanting that with foundation landscape planting. So that's going to be a change. If you turn to the next page, then you can see where that land adjacent to the building, that ground adjacent to the building, is being compromised by stormwater, and they're starting to get some washout along the face of that. And on the next page, it shows it even clearer. So this area is going to look different. It is not going to be a place where they can do outdoor sales. It's not going to have the covering anymore. It used to be where there was some outdoor dining. Do you mind just scrolling up, Amy, on this image? The areas that they're requesting to use for outdoor sales include the covered patio in the back of the building on the courtyard, the patio that's on the courtyard. And if you can go to the next page for me. This is a view of what was outdoor dining for the restaurant. This is where they would like to have the opportunity to use for some outdoor sales in that area. And then scroll down one more, Amy. This is the back patio area. So you can see how it's out of view from the front of the building and from Franklin Road. But I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have, and I hope that cleared what was meant in our submittal about pedestrian way, that's what the front of the building is going to be used for, pedestrian connection.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it. All right, next we will open the public comment period. Are there any citizen comments on this item? All right, seeing none, is there a motion to close the public comment?
I move we close the public comment.
Motion made by Board Member Smith. Is there a second?
A second.
Second by Board Member Fleischauer. All in favor say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? All right, public comment is closed. Any questions from staff or the applicant on kind of packet or comments made so far? I'll just generally ask, I mean, not details, but I guess I'm trying to see the vision. It kind of feeds into the probably request for sales area. Can you help us there? Just, I know we've talked about kind of removal of the front. What would be the overall vision for the building? Are we talking, would it be like a permanent retail tenant in the building?
It's a
that's
retail
using-
tenant in the building.
Okay.
They do indoor and outdoor lifestyle. The outdoor sales materials would include maybe lounge furniture, some outdoor tables, maybe that are as a part of that back porch experience. They also have some landscape pots and urns and things like that that they sell.
So the actual tenant would be in this structure, or would it be from
The
inside the
retail
factory?
tenant would be in this structure.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, any additional questions? I don't know if anybody else had that question, but it's kind of what I was thinking anyway in my mind. So,
I have a question of staff. So the intent of the ordinance to limit outdoor sales to the front of the structure and no more than half the facade of the structure. That seems to me to, when I think about the intent of that ordinance, to apply to like downtown Franklin, where you would not want clothing on sale to take up more than half the facade of the building. And also, I would think that in feasibility for downtown Franklin, you couldn't do it out in the back because there is no back to have for pedestrian traffic. Or from a shopping center perspective, it's the same thing, is you wouldn't want outside sales to take up more than the first half of a facade of a shopping strip center, or to show that would not be very attractive, more than half. And also, but for a shopping center or strip center, there is no feasibility of having sales in the back, because usually that's where employee parking occurs. Am I missing something on the intent of the ordinance?
The intent, are you asking like what the intent is, or?
Yeah, am I wrong in what the intent is?
No, I mean, I think that kind of encapsulates the intent. I mean, it really is for the outdoor sales that are located, because they are restricted by our zoning ordinance, to be only in the front of the building. We want to make sure that it's not going to take up the entire front facade of the retail building, blocking the entire front facade of the building. So the intent of the zoning ordinance in this case is to ensure that outdoor sales that are required to be located in the front are not dominating the front facade of the retail building.
So help me understand why the ordinance requires that outdoor sales be done in the front.
I mean, it really, I think what it comes down to is that's where outdoor sales traditionally are, and so that's where we've put in our zoning ordinance that they are to be located, because that's traditionally where outdoor sales are located. I don't know if there's really more intent to it than that.
Okay, thank you.
And this requirement, just clarifying this, it would apply whether this retail, it could be a retail strip center in the middle of Cool Springs, or it could be downtown Franklin. It's anywhere citywide that this applies. Okay. Any additional questions? All right, is there a motion?
I move we approve the variance request to allow outdoor sales be associated with the commercial use to be located behind the building, and to approve the variance request to allow outdoor sales to be not limited to half the length of the front facade of the structure. And the reason I believe that those criteria are met is I think that the zoning ordinance intent was not applicable in this scenario, because there is so much space in the back of the structure that is suitable for retail sales, and I don't think the zoning ordinance intent contemplated that would be the case.
Okay, just to clarify on that one, did you want to include "and on the roof," or are you wanting to exclude the roof in that motion?
I'm reading what the recommended motion is, but yes, we can include the roof.
Okay. All right, so motion for approval made, kind of as read on the recommended staff motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right, second by Board Member Fleischauer. Any discussion? I think to me, the site's definitely unique. I think this may have been mentioned in the motion. Site's unique. We have multiple buildings kind of on one large lot. I remember that we had the map pulled up, the zoning map. You know, the factory's a large site. I do think context is important. I think I do get the intent. In many ways, whether it's the front or the back at all, I think we do probably traditionally think of the front, you know, is where the retail sales will be. It's visible to traffic. You've got activity there. So that's why I support. That's why I support the request. Any additional discussion at all or thoughts?
So I lost my internet. I had to get the thing back up now. But I too agree that just the shape of this piece of property where it's located does lend itself to having that rear sales and sales up top. I do think the strict application of this ordinance in this circumstance would limit what could be a really excellent opportunity here, given what the factory is, that it's a retail space that's designed to draw folks to it. So I do think that strictly it would be an undue hardship. And the staff report already indicates that third criteria is met. So I do think all the criteria met in this circumstance to justify the variance requests.
Any additional comments?
Can I ask one? I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
Can I clarify your motion? You read the recommendation as written by staff. I do believe the applicant has requested the roof and the rear. Do you intend your motion to be the full request of the applicant?
Yes, indeed.
Thank you.
Okay, so motion for approval made, and again, we're voting on two variance requests here. So there's two variance requests. Those motions were read by Board Member Smith. Got a second. I think we have a second, don't we? That was Board Member Flushour was our second. Let's take a vote one by one then. So Board Member Beams.
I approve.
Board Member Scales.
Approve.
Board Member Langley, I approve. Board Member Flushour.
I agree.
And Board Member Smith.
Approved.
All right, so both of these variance requests are approved. So our last item is item number 6. It's a variance request to allow a retaining wall to be located a minimum of 0 inches from any lot line. That's the first variance request. The second variance request is to allow a swimming pool to be located a minimum of 1 foot from the rear property line. And this is for the property located at 1009 Fair Street. Staff.
Thank you. The subject property is located at 1009 Fair Street and is zoned R4 Residential District. The property is also located within the Historic Preservation Overlay and the Central Franklin Overlay. There is an existing home on the lot, and there is an accessory structure that has received approval from the Historic Zoning Commission to have major rework done. The accessory structure was originally located right at the rear and the side property lines and will be at the same location when it is finished. The existing home is located approximately 55 feet from the front lot line and about 15 feet from the rear property line, so it is situated towards the back of the property. Due to the location of the existing house, the space in the backyard is limited. The homeowner is proposing a 9 by 21 foot swimming pool in the backyard, and due to the slope in the backyard, a 2-foot retaining wall would be necessary to level the backyard for the pool. The proposed retaining wall would abut the rear and side property lines with a 0-foot setback, and the pool would be located adjacent to the retaining wall with a 1-foot setback from the rear lot line. A 2-foot retaining wall is required to be located at least 5 feet from any property line, according to the Franklin zoning ordinance, and swimming pools are required to be located at least 5 feet from any property line. Seeing as the proposed retaining wall and swimming pool do not meet the Franklin zoning ordinance setbacks requirements, the applicant is requesting a variance to allow a swimming pool to be located a minimum of 1 foot from the rear property line, and a variance to allow a retaining wall to be located a minimum of 0 inches from any lot line. Staff would also like to note that the property received approval from Historic Preservation staff for a 7-foot tall fence in the backyard, but they did not receive approval for a retaining wall in the backyard. So if the retaining wall request is approved, they will need to go back to Historic and get approval for the wall from Historic Preservation staff. For request 1, to allow a swimming pool to be located a minimum of 1 foot from the rear property line. Criteria 1. The existing house is located uniquely towards the rear of the property, which leaves very limited space in the backyard. Given the limited space in the backyard, this property would not be able to accommodate a reasonably sized swimming pool within the zoning ordinance requirements. With the rear lot line being about 15 feet from the rear facade of the house and the setback from the swimming pool being 5 feet, there is only 10 feet of backyard space for a swimming pool. That does not leave enough room for the necessary retaining wall, the pool, and the necessary space between the house and the pool. Staff finds this criteria is met. Criteria 2. The strict application of the zoning ordinance results in a backyard space too small to fit a reasonably sized swimming pool. With the rear lot line being about 15 feet from the rear facade of the house and the setback for the swimming pool being 5 feet, there is only 10 feet of backyard space for a swimming pool. The setback regulation creates a backyard space too small to install a reasonably sized swimming pool. Staff finds this criteria is met. Criteria 3. Staff finds that this request would not be a substantial detriment to the public good and would not substantially impair the purpose and intent of the zoning ordinance. The intent of this ordinance is to provide space between pools and neighboring properties as a small buffer for noise and pool activities. The owner is proposing a 5-foot fence on top of the 2-foot retaining wall to provide privacy and a barrier between the properties. This meets the intent of the ordinance and ensures that the swimming pool won't be a detriment to the neighboring properties. Staff finds this criteria is met. Request 2, to allow a retaining wall to be located a minimum of 0 inches from any lot line. Criteria 1. Given the very limited space in the backyard, if the retaining wall were to be located within the required setbacks, there would not be enough space for the swimming pool. For this reason, in order to be able to put a pool in the backyard, the retaining wall is not able to comply with the zoning ordinance regulations. Staff finds this criteria is met with the condition that request 1 meets the criteria for granting a variance. Criteria 2. The strict application of the zoning ordinance would prevent a retaining wall from leveling the backyard space from being located far enough from the existing house to allow a reasonably sized swimming pool in this case. If the retaining wall were to be located within the required setbacks, there would not be enough space for the swimming pool. For this reason, in order to be able to put a pool in the backyard, the retaining wall is not able to comply with the zoning ordinance regulations. Staff finds this criteria is met with the condition that request 1 meets the criteria for granting a variance. Criteria 3. Staff finds that this request would not be a substantial detriment to the public good and would not substantially impair the purpose and intent of the zoning ordinance. The intent of the ordinance is to ensure that if a retaining wall were to collapse, it would not collapse onto the neighbor's property and to ensure that it wouldn't negatively impact stormwater flow between the properties. The retaining wall would be holding back ground that slopes up from the property to the neighbor's property behind. So if the wall were to collapse, it would collapse onto or in on the owner's property and wouldn't be visible from the neighbor's property behind. The retaining wall will also encourage stormwater to travel to the existing catch basin that will collect the stormwater, and it will exit at the front of the property. Additionally, the retaining wall is proposed to have a fence on top of the wall, which will provide privacy between the properties. Staff finds this criteria is met. Staff recommends that the Board of Zoning Appeals move to approve the variance request to allow a swimming pool to be located a minimum of 1 foot from the rear property line and approve the variance request to allow a retaining wall to be located a minimum of 0 inches from any lot line with the condition that request 1 is approved for the property located at 1009 Fair Street because the criteria for granting a variance have been met. Thank you.
Thank you, staff. Is the applicant present for this item? If you could step forward for us and state your name.
Thank you. It's Patrick Ogle. I'm the homeowner. First, I'd like to say thank you to the zoning board and also especially to the zoning and historic planning staff. From the historic side of the planning staff, we've been working on this home for about 2.5 years, and it has been a challenge, to say the least. The reason that this is coming up now is because we have had to do, in essence, a significant amount of site redesign, including with stormwater. So from the standpoint of the variances that have been requested, it is my understanding that the wall and the pool otherwise within the zoning district would be allowed. And so in essence, the matter here being addressed is that of the location. And so historically, the home was subdivided from its property back in, I believe, 1919, and I believe the home was built in 1920 based on my research. One thing that is unique about this home, and is in essence the source of much of the hardship, is the fact that unlike many of the properties in the Hinchyville Historic District, there are 3 properties that are set back an inordinate amount from the road in front. This home specifically is 55 feet from the road. The homes on both sides are similar, but every other home in the district is about half of that distance to the road. So the setback in the rear, where we're trying to use what little bit of useful property there is very limited. In fact, there's about 41% is the limited amount of useful property, not counting the additional setbacks on the sides in front of the home. So there's a very, very limited amount of space. Part of the things that we've addressed at the historic zoning board meetings is that because the home is a 1-story home, which is fine, but the fact that there's no ability to go above it, there's no ability to go behind it, there's no ability to build to the sides of it. So that footprint of that home and the airspace of that home are fixed by, essentially by law. So the only additional useful space we have on that entire lot, other than to roam about freely on the front yard, is in the rear of that yard. The carriage house is already on 2 0 lot lines, so this is not a new encroachment into any setback. The fence has already been allowed, so the existence of the fence has already crossed the table of the Historic Zoning Board several times. And the retaining wall that is being requested here is, while it is designated as a 2-foot retaining wall, the majority, if not all of that height, is actually going to be on the property owner's side of the property, not on the adjacent property. So I've read the comments. I absolutely take them to heart. Many of them address, especially the adjacent neighbors who are here, who I hold in great respect and regard, are rightfully concerned about the stormwater. That is absolutely a major concern of what we have tried to address with the retaining wall. The home has never had, to my knowledge, and from everything I've been able to ascertain, has never had stormwater mitigation. Other than the full extent of it being there were some guardrails put on the driveway so that all of the water that cascades from Main Street during every single storm just flows freeform through the entire backyard, which has, over the span of whatever it is, 90 some odd years, actually 105 years, has materially eroded and essentially permanently damaged the carriage house. So now that mitigation is underway. That still doesn't change the situation that faces the property, particularly with respect to modern code requirements and modern stormwater requirements. So in order to mitigate that stormwater, what we have done is, in the location of a previous tree that was adjacent to the carriage house, there has been trenching all the way from the back of the property, all the way to the front of the property, where there has been a drain that with a catch basin that is at the 0 lot line at the rear of the property. So the idea is absolutely to, yes, create that retaining wall with a very shallow height on the adjoining property side that will channel all of that stormwater into a catch basin that then exits to the front of the lawn. So it no longer destroys the property that at 1009 Fair Street, our property, but also mitigates the adjacent stormwater problems. We've worked with, we've contacted multiple people at Historic, at zoning, and in the engineering department. We've consulted 3 different engineering firms. We've really run this to ground. So again, not taking that lightly and have every intent of mitigating that stormwater. So as it relates to the swimming pool, our belief is that we have the right to have a pool. The question is, where is it going to be located? And within the narrowness of the 15 feet that exists between the rear lot line and the home, if we were to try and put a swimming pool in that location, it would in essence have to be pushed as far as legally allowed with the engineering requirements of adjacent walls next to the home, which would prevent the ability to have reasonable amounts of ingress and egress between the home and the pool, and would in effect require that all traffic in the rear of the home, from the carriage house, from the driveway to the rear entrance of the home to the entire rear area of the property, would effectively have to require someone to walk all the way around the pool, and in essence is requiring, as a matter of safety mitigation or the lack thereof, to force people to walk around a pool. That does not seem like a very good idea. We have a 3.5-year-old daughter. That does not seem like a good idea for her. That being said, there is going to be a mechanical top that would be proposed to this that meets code that would help mitigate safety issues in that regard. The one thing I would add before turning this over is in the submitted imagery, if you look at what the hardscape is, I know that's one of the things that's been brought up, is that the hardscape is perhaps too significant. I think it is somewhat deceptive. We also submitted a total site plan, and if you look at the size of that area that is comprised of the proposed swimming pool and the hardscape, it is a very small space overall. And so that's the majority of the things I'd like to present at this time. However, with that said, if possible, I'd like to reserve some time to respond to comments at the end, if that's possible.
All right, thank you for your comments. We'll probably have some questions too for you, I'm
Certainly,
sure, after
absolutely.
we kind of get through public comment and then,
Okay, thank you.
all right, so next we will open the public comment. Are there any citizen comments on this item? I already know the answer to that question. So I've got several name cards here. I've organized them based on alphabetical order. Feel like the last always gets kind of the worst of things. So we're going to start last and then work our way forward. Got a tight range. We got H through K. So instead of A to Z, we got a real tight range there. So let's start with Mr. Ted Kelly. If you can step forward for us, we'll start with you. You've got the floor.
Thank you. Thank you. I'd like to start off by saying I'm speaking for myself and my wife, who live at 1012 right behind the property. We applaud the applicants taking on this project of restoring and renovating the house and the accessory building. But I think that there's an issue in my mind with putting a 9 by 21 foot swimming pool in this very narrow space. If you look at the site plan, you'll get a better vision of what that looks like. You don't really get that off of the plot plan. The pool would actually be located within 1 foot of the rear property line and with 3 feet, 3 inches from the back building, back of the house, which, again, I don't know how much space you really need to have to get around the pool, but that doesn't seem like very, very much. The bulk of the remaining area in the back is going to be hardscape. It's not a big area. There's not a lot of hardscape, but pretty much everything that's not the pool is going to be hardscape. And pools by their very nature are a bit noisy. And, I don't have a problem with swimming pools, but not having the kind of buffer space that you typically get with a swimming pool like there is. There's a couple of pools on our street, West Main, big backyards, lots of buffer, lots of green space. Mitigates a lot of the concerns about noise. I think with having so much hard space and being so crammed into this little area, that the noise issue is going to be amplified. You've got just almost like a bouncing off of the walls and so forth. So in that regard, we are opposing the pool variance and then, of course, the associated variance for the retaining wall. Thank you. Oh, I thought that was cutting me off. Is my time up? That'll help us as well. That's what that noise is. Okay. Let's go next to Mr. Roger Jones.
Good evening. My wife, Tina, and I live at 1002 West Main Street. We are here for 2 reasons tonight. One is because we are concerned about the impact on the neighbors who are directly located behind where the pool would be installed. And 2, we're concerned about the impact and the precedent that this would set. Because from our view, if you approve this tonight, you render both setbacks and the requirements for a variance meaningless. The standard is not whether there's enough room on a piece of property, given other structures on the property, for a pool. That's not the standard for a variance. Your standard, which is incorporated from state law, we start with, It has to be something that relates to the property itself, not the location of the house, not the location of other improvements. All we have to do is look at the language. Narrowness, shallowness, shape a specific piece of property. And it has to be such that because of that condition of the property, not where the house is located, that the property will not accommodate development. The standard is not whether it will accommodate a swimming pool of a particular size. It is whether it will accommodate development. We know it will accommodate development. It has development on it right now. It's a house. The staff report does not find that the lot will not accommodate development, and the staff report finds nothing unique about the property itself. No, there's nothing identified in the staff report at all that's unique to this property. This property differs not at all from all of the interior lots on Fair Street. They're all the same. So, doesn't satisfy the first criteria. The second criteria is hardship. Well, what is the hardship? The right to a swimming pool? Surely that's not a hardship. An exceptional hardship is a right to a swimming pool of a particular size. Only 8% of homes in the United States even have a swimming pool, let alone of a particular size. Now, this swimming pool they would like to build is 9 by 21, but a much smaller pool was just installed behind our house, on Fair Street, behind our house, within the setback. It's a smaller pool. It's not 9 by 21, it's 7 by 13. It's more like a plunge pool, but it's installed right behind our house on a similar lot. There's simply no hardship here. And then finally, it's not in the public interest because these setbacks are here for a reason. They are the rule. They're not an exception, they're the rule. And the purpose of the setback is with respect to swimming pools, and it's stated in your own ordinance. That 5 feet is designed to reduce noise.
If you can try to wrap up your comments for us, just to give us.
That's what it's designed for, and so you can't accommodate the purpose of the ordinance if you approve the pool. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next, Ms. Harriet Harms.
I'm Harriet Harms. I live at 1010 West Main Street. And my house is directly in back of the applicant's property. I'm going to give you a little history and then go into my argument. I've lived in Franklin with my parents since I was a teenager, and then with my husband after I married. I've been a teenager. I was a teenager well over 60 years ago. I've seen many, as I'm sure you all have too, seen changes to what was once a small country town. It is no longer that. My husband, Dennis Harms, promised me an old house when we married, and he kept his promise. My parents are, of course, long gone. I have no siblings. I have no husband anymore, as he has passed away also. There are no children, no grandchildren. All I have now is this house, my home. I have a front porch that is about 20 feet from West Main Street, which is a state highway with very heavy traffic. There's cars, there's motorcycles, there's police and fire engines, sirens, and a variety of construction vehicles. This, of course, is very noisy, which is why I enjoy the peace and quiet of my back deck. If the Board of Zoning Appeals approves these variances, you will be totally ignoring your rules and regulations, but also show total disregard for the houses and neighbors around this property. If you allow these variances, you will devalue my property and surrounding properties and destroy my back deck privacy. From my deck, I can see over my 8-foot hedge directly into the backyard of the property at 1009 Fair Street. The retaining wall they are asking for will cause water to back up and flood my backyard and the properties around me. The owner purchased this property with your rules and regulations in place. The owner knew that these rules and regulations were there. Why have these rules and regulations if you're not going to enforce them?
If you can wrap up your comments for us, please.
Do what?
If you can wrap up your comments for
I
us.
got one more sentence.
Okay.
I respectfully ask you to enforce your rules and not allow these variances. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We've got one more speaker card here, Ms. Kim Hamner.
Thank you. My husband and I, Kim and Kelly Hamner, live adjacent to the property. Our concern is, and again, setting precedents for all this, is that it's been well covered by these people who have spoken before me, but also, and again, they knew what they were purchasing. Our lots are small. Ours are 1/4 of an acre, very small backyards. We've gotten used to it. We've lived there about 13 years. But anyway, the rainwater flows from Ms. Harm's property down through ours, and it comes in under the fence and around, and behind the hedge that she was referring to also, and behind their property. So my concern really is this rainwater, and our house is not flooded now, but we are at or near capacity. The house is not flooded, the garage is not flooded, the basement is not flooded. Yes, it seeps in over a period of time after a good rainfall, and our sump pump pumps it out, but it is not flooded, it's not coming in our back door. The sump pump and all that he is referring to is on the opposite side of the property. We don't know how this is going to impact our house, and if so, if it causes flooding, who will be held liable for that? Who is going to absorb the cost of getting that resolved? We don't want to have to, it's going to devalue our property, and so we have great concerns about that in addition to the other ones that have already been expressed. So trying to keep within my 2 minutes. Certainly appreciate y'all's consideration of all of our concerns. So thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Any additional, don't have any additional speaker cards, but did we miss anyone kind of would like to speak on this item? All right, seeing none, is there a motion to close the public comment?
Motion to close.
Motion made by Board Member Scales. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Board Member Beams. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, anyone opposed? All right, public comment is closed. Are there any questions of staff of the applicant? I know I've got probably a couple, but I'll let someone else start if y'all have questions.
I've got one question. So the swimming pool request would have to go to the to the zoning, historic zoning, right?
The retaining wall in the backyard.
But not the swimming pool?
Not that I'm aware of. No.
Okay, thank you.
How, Jeff had asked me the question, how tall is a retaining wall again? We know, I think I heard that number, but,
It's proposed to be 2 feet.
okay, gotcha. I think my question, so I looked at this plan, I think Citizen mentioned it, hardscape, we do have a small area of turf, retaining wall kind of right up against the property line. And I know we're not looking at site plan or plot plan in the case of maybe residential accessory items added, if we want to call them that. But would that be looked at as far as kind of plot plan for construction of this, or as far as like drainage and stormwater runoff, any of those items? Would staff look at that at some point, or?
They would have to submit for a permit for the swimming pool. If the retaining wall doesn't exceed 4 feet in total height from the bottom of the footing to the top of the wall, a permit's not required for that retaining wall, but the swimming pool would. And a survey, as close as this is to the property lines, absolutely a survey will be required, and engineering will be, they're on all swimming pool reviews, so they will be making comments and reviews related to the stormwater.
I think my other question, and I may have missed this in the presentation, we do have a copy of the site plan for the benefit of the applicant and citizens and attendants. A couple of you referenced that. Is there any fencing? I know we talked about, is there any fencing kind of between, and if I'm in the front yard or the front of the house, can I walk straight back to the pool, or is there any fencing there at all?
Existing or what's proposed?
I guess proposed.
What they're proposing is a fence that will be on top of the retaining wall. What they had approved from historic preservation staff was a 7-foot fence along that property line, along the rear and the side there. And now that their plan includes the pool and the retaining wall, my understanding from their application is that what they're hoping to present to historic or submit for historic preservation staff is approval of a 5-foot fence on top of the 2-foot retaining wall.
Okay. Would there be any fencing between, I guess I'm looking at kind of between the house and the backyard, so it's in the front. Okay, gotcha. I just missed it, Jeff. All right. Any other questions? All right, is there a motion?
I will say this, the new pools out, they do have equipment that is much quieter than the old pools used to be. Well, what we can do is, I propose to move to approve the variance request, but I'm going to put a caveat in there that he has to purchase a high-end filter system. Well, this will ensure that it won't be that loud. In other words, there's different levels of filters you can buy for pools. It's not like it used to be. You can hardly hear them running.
You can continue with your motion, Jeff, there. All right.
I'm going to move to approve the variance request to allow a swimming pool to be located a minimum of 1 foot from the rear property line, and approve the variance request to allow a retaining wall to be located a minimum of 0 inches from any line, with the condition that one is approved. And I will say that also the applicant must submit calculations with the separate pool permit on a high-end filtration system with a low dB gain, in noise attenuation.
Okay, motion for approval with some details there. Is it clear to staff? I know we've got, I think dB be decibels. I'm not real sure.
That's correct. Excuse me, that's correct.
Good deal. So I'm thinking through this one. Would that give staff enough to really be able to measure anything, or do we need to clarify any of that motion? Or is it appropriate? I mean, that's a Bill question for me.
You want to respond?
So generally speaking, it's fine to add a condition or the installation of particular equipment. I think my concern listening to it and trying to write it down is what the chair is mentioning and what Shanna's response might indicate, which is when it comes back to staff, is a low dB gain filtration system a term of art that somebody would recognize whether it's been met or not, or can you clarify what that means?
It would be a low decibel sound attenuation filtration system.
Okay.
Now, the swimming pool permit will be separate. So it's a separate permit from the rest of the facility construction.
I got that. I think my question, though, is a low dB, low decibel sound attenuation filtration system, is that a defined term of art that staff will know to recognize when they're
You would
looking?
think out of all those words, they could figure out it needs to be quiet. Okay, so.
I appreciate the common sense approach, but.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying.
Low. Let's start with low. How low is low? Or do you have
I don't
something in
know the
mind?
dBs on them.
Okay.
So let's simplify it and let's just say, with the caveat that a high-end quiet filtration system is used. How's that?
Staff, can y'all, it's really up to you all. Is that sufficiently defined for you all to know how to work with the permit request? Because here's the thing, and I say this not to be unkind, when y'all go away, we're going to keep working on this.
Right.
I should say they, not me, are going to keep working on this. And I don't want them to be in the position of not doing what you all are choosing to vote on.
Right.
Also, the neighbors are concerned as well, so it kind of, clarity helps everybody at this point. I think we common sense understand what you're saying.
Yeah, I just
It's-
don't know enough about the technology to properly describe it. So I'm trying to help the guy out and help them out as well.
Yep, I think, well, the motion, I think it does leave a lot of staff discretion. I mean, that's the concern because, like, what is quiet? You know, if I'm the inspector and go out there and I don't have hearing aids and I don't hear well anyway, it's quiet to me. You know, the next inspector comes out and has, you know, perfect, better than perfect hearing. Motion's been made, I guess, I mean, I agree with the common sense. Would you like to refine it in any way, or are you good with it as, Jeff?
Think how we could say it.
Okay. I know I saw an image pulled up, staff was kind of looking at, you know, to me, even if we had a decibel number, like a reasonable decibel number that would help us out on a system, I saw that pulled up. And that's a lot of work to come up with that. I don't even know what, you know, my voice now, what decibel level that is. We need an audiologist in here, you know? So motion has been made. Is there a second on Jeff's motion? All right, would you like to revise your motion, Jeff?
Yeah.
We can give it a little bit longer, but I'm afraid it may fail. I know I have a little bit of concerns just on the staff end. If I'm Shanna or an inspector going out there, it's going to be tough to say, is this quiet enough?
Jeff, would it be worthwhile to maybe have some kind of deferral and get that data and come back? I mean, because that may be helpful because I think the challenge we have right now is, I can tell you, I don't know what low means. I don't know what quiet means, and I think that's one of the challenges I think we have. Maybe some data or some guidance regarding low or high or whatever, some more clarity, so we could give very definitive guidance, if possible.
Let's,
All right, so I guess if there's no second, motion fails, right? All right, so let's start over. Is there a motion on this item? Which can include deferral. I think as William mentioned, if that's the thought process of just working through the details of that or kind of whatever the motion may be.
What's our next meeting date?
I believe it's June 5th. Yes, June 5th.
I move to defer this item to the June 5th Franklin Board of Zone Appeals meeting to allow the applicant and the staff further time to investigate what may constitute a low decibel, in air quotes, quiet filtration system.
Okay, motion made for deferral until the next meeting, which we said was June, what was that date again? June 5th. Is there a second on that motion?
I'll second.
Second by Board Member Beams. Any discussion?
I think what Jeff.
can I add one thing? I would also like to add that the location of the system needs to be approved. Because I don't believe it needs to be on the very back property line. So I think that also comes into play.
Yep,
So, yeah.
the comment I'll ask, so we got a motion for deferral in a second, so we're deferring it to the June meeting. I think, I have concerns about it, just looking at the site plan, the amount of hardscape, probably the location of the pool. I have concerns there. We're deferring it, but
If I could as well, I think the 5-foot buffer is a requirement that's not being met in this case, and it's there for a reason, and I don't see any of the justification that supports not adhering to the guidelines of the ordinance.
yeah, go ahead. Any additional discussion?
I agree with you, and that's one of the reasons I thought we have it there for a reason, and you need to stick by it, and other designs could be looked at, I feel like, to accommodate a swimming pool, the location of this equipment. Yeah, I 100% agree. It does not need to be on the rear property line. Right. Because they are noisy, although they make things quieter, there's still going to be noise involved.
Okay. Any additional discussion at all? All right, so we got a motion for deferral, a second. Let's go one by one. Board Member Beams.
I'm in favor.
Board Member Scales.
Approved, sorry.
I can't withdraw it now at this point because I've made the motion and it's been seconded. I don't create problems, I apologize.
It's your motion. At the time you make it, you need to support it. If after discussion and debate, you no longer agree with the position you started with, you can vote against your own motion. That is odd, but it's the nature of debate.
Sure. By virtue of the debate and discussion I've heard, I vote against deferral.
Okay, I'll vote against deferral as well. Board Member Fleischauer.
You guys are killing me. No, I'll vote to defer.
Okay, and Board Member Smith.
I vote against deferral.
Okay, so we have 3 noes for the deferral, so motion for deferral fails. All right, is there a new motion?
I move to deny the variance request to allow a swimming pool to be located a minimum of 1 foot from the rear property line. And I move to deny the variance request to allow a retaining wall to be located a minimum of 5 inches, of 0 inches from the lot line, because the criteria for granting the variance have not been met.
I second.
Okay, motion for disapproval of both variance requests made by Board Member Scales, second by Board Member Smith. Discussion.
As you've noted, Board Member Smith and you, Board Member Beams, there is a buffer that we're not honoring if we grant this variance request. Just by virtue of the discussion we've had just now, it's hard to really understand how to appropriately accommodate this request given this site plan. I also have concerns about the amount of hardscape and whether that's going to create stormwater concerns for other property owners. And for those reasons, I don't know that, I don't believe that each of the criteria have been satisfied such that these variance requests can be authorized.
Yeah, I would echo those concerns. I think I mentioned that earlier on the motion for deferral. I mean, it's definitely a tight site. And I think possibly with another plan, I think addressing stormwater issues would still be required, at some point. But that fully support the new motion. So any other discussion? All right, let's go one by one. So Board Member Beams, we'll try it. Number 3.
Approved.
All right, so Board Member Beams approves the motion for disapproval. It's 2 variance requests. Board Member Scales.
Approve.
All right, Board Member Langley approve the motion for disapproval. Board Member Fleischauer.
No.
All right, so no there. And Board Member Smith.
Approve.
Okay, so Board Member Smith is a yes. So it is 4-1 disapproving the variance request. All right, we are to adjournment. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I move we adjourn.
Motion made by Board Member Smith. Is there a second? Second. Board Member Scales, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right. I don't- Thank you, guys. Everybody have a great night.